it looks like China may be building naval bases all around Africa, and I don't think their intentions are friendly. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell. When it comes to rivalries between superpowers, the so-called Global South has had its hands full trying to find a way forward for its own interests, Africa in particular. While Africa as a continent has generally declared non-alignment in order to avoid great power rivalries, in practice non-alignment doesn't mean much when China is involved. After all, as noted in a recent report from the Africa Center for Strategic Studies, with a total of 231 commercial ports in Africa, Chinese firms are present in over a third of Africa's maritime trade hubs. In some instances, these Chinese companies will dominate the entire port development enterprise, from construction and operations to finance and sharing ownership. As operators, they can also determine who gets to use the port, and they're building more every day, which is why some people are concerned about the possibility of military use for these ports. For example, this is Walvis Bay, Namibia. It's the country's second biggest city, which isn't saying a lot since much of the largely desolate country looks like this. And the coast looks even drier. Despite this, the country has long wanted to increase its connectivity to global markets, especially through shipping. And lo and behold, here comes China to the rescue. In just a few years, Walvis Bay's container port went from looking like this to this. The newly inaugurated container shipping port sits on just over 98 acres of reclaimed land, all thanks to China. Because who better to reclaim land at sea than the Chinese Communist Party? This kind of land reclamation is not easy, but the process only took 5 years, thanks to China Harbor Engineering Company. The company's vice president, Li Yi, even said at the port's inauguration ceremony that his company stands ready to provide investment, construction technology, knowledge transfer, and operational one-stop service to participate in the development of Namibia. How generous of them. I'm sure that doesn't come with any strings attached. Well, maybe 1 or 2 strings. The country is rich in natural resources, including uranium, graphite, copper, and other rare earth minerals. Naturally, the CCP has invested a lot in the country in exchange for access to these resources. But it's not just about resources, because according to Paul Nantulia, a research associated with the Africa Center for Strategic Studies, the new port in Walvis Bay can house up to 8 guided missile destroyers. There's also been rumors that the Chinese want to build a base nearby. 10 years ago, a confidential letter from Namibia's ambassador to China began circulating in the country's press. It stated that a Chinese delegation will visit Namibia for discussions on the way forward regarding plans for the proposed naval base in Walvis Bay. China and the Namibian government, of course, denied this, saying that the report exaggerated and distorted the original source. The ambassador and other officials from China and Namibia said that all that was discussed during the meeting were potential plans for Chinese naval assistance in preventing illegal fishing in Namibian waters, and maybe training for the Namibian Navy. To this day, there is no Chinese naval base in Namibia, and many other Chinese-built ports in Africa are not compatible with hosting China's Navy. But some people in Africa aren't convinced, and there's a reason for this. Around the same time, similar rumors started circulating about a Chinese base in Djibouti, on the other side of the continent from Namibia. And according to Nantulia, both China and the Djibouti government made similar denials. Yet now, surprise, surprise, guess where there's a Chinese military base? That's right, Djibouti. After a Chinese company first built a port in the small country, the CCP opened its first overseas military base here. Conveniently, not too far from a bunch of other foreign military bases, including a US one. The base includes a dock capable of accommodating aircraft carriers along with nuclear submarines. China has said that this base enables it to contribute to anti-piracy operations in order to protect trade going through the Suez Canal. So some of this might have to do with giving China privileged access to trade routes and safeguarding that access. But if you zoom out, It looks like part of a wider plan to grow the CCP's security and diplomatic clout in Africa. 78 port sites in Africa that Chinese firms are involved in can berth Chinese naval vessels based on their specifications, while others can dock them on port calls, making them part of China's overall plan to build quote-unquote unsuspicious dual-use infrastructure. For example, Angola's Luanda port can host any major Chinese surface combat vessel. And it's not just about what the Chinese Navy can do, it's about what they do. Nantoya said he identified more than 10 occasions when Chinese military ships have docked in 7 different African ports in recent years, including in Tanzania, Nigeria, South Africa, and Djibouti as staging grounds for exercises. So why would Africa agree to this sort of thing? Well, some African governments see this as a way to boost their own economies and prestige. China can rapidly build the infrastructure, and this can connect the vast Chinese market to African economies. The CCP also has experience building and managing these ports. But China can also lay the groundwork for expanding its influence and projecting power off its shores without openly antagonizing Europe or the US. Since these ports lie both on the Indian Ocean and in the Atlantic, this gives the Chinese Navy a means by which it can challenge rivals at sea in 2 oceans. Seriously, never underestimate the importance of supply lines in war. But Africa is fertile ground for Chinese communist influence operations. Many local governments are riddled with corruption or otherwise incompetent and authoritarian. Only China is willing to work with them. And then China claims it's helping the global south, because as we all know, the Chinese communists are such great humanitarians. Yet with an increasing number of reports on Chinese involvement in the continent's ports, some officials and analysts in Africa are wary of being dragged into tensions between China and the US, because Africa has more than enough issues. The good news is that some of these countries are growing wary of China after years of debt-trap diplomacy. And hopefully, this will deter the CCP from turning any of these ports into full-fledged naval bases. And hey, do you want more China Uncensored? Then subscribe to my new premium website, ChinaUncensored.tv. You'll get access to exclusive live streams, episodes, and the satisfaction of knowing that despite everything the CCP and YouTube are doing to run us out of business, you're keeping the show alive. Just click here. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.